Canton Confidential, the Karen Reed murder trial, starts right now.
Dear Judge Cannone, I am writing to inform you on behalf of the jury that despite our exhaustive review of the evidence and our diligent consideration of all disputed evidence, we have been unable to reach a unanimous verdict.
Yet another twist in the Karen Reed murder trial. Less than 3 hours into day 4 of deliberations, the jury said they're deadlocked. Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm J.C. Monahan.
And I'm Glenn Jones. Deliberations will now stretch into next week. This morning, Judge Beverly Cannone encouraged the jury to keep working towards an agreement. By her count, the trial included testimony from 74 witnesses, with more than 650 exhibits filed as evidence. Judge Cannone said today, less than 20 hours of deliberation is simply not long enough for them to throw in the towel.
Karen Reed is facing 3 charges, including second-degree murder and manslaughter. Each one of the counts includes its own specific instructions and criteria for consideration, all of which will be back up for debate when the jury returns on Monday.
So, still plenty of questions tonight. No one can say with certainty how this all ends. Our Kirsten Glavin is live in Denham. Kirsten, about 21 hours of deliberating. So what is the mood like now outside the courthouse?
Well, J.C. Glenn, a lot of people were hopeful today when jurors asked to stay late to 4:15, but that quickly turned to disappointment with still no verdict.
Note from the jury.
After 4 days of deliberations in the Karen Reed murder trial, the jury passing a note to Judge Beverly Cannone on Friday indicating they're deadlocked.
We have been unable to reach a unanimous verdict.
The Commonwealth asking for deliberations to continue. Reed's defense disagreeing.
The note doesn't really indicate affirmatively that they can't come to a conclusion. It just says that they haven't come to a conclusion through their deliberative process at this time.
We have nowhere to turn. So our position is the jury should be read the Tui Rodriguez model instruction and go from there.
Legal experts say the Tui Rodriguez charge is a set of instructions the judge will read to deadlocked jurors, typically after they've gone back to deliberate several times.
When a jury is deadlocked, a judge can give an instruction encouraging the jurors to reach unanimity.
Jay Blitzman is a former first justice of the Middlesex County Juvenile Court. He says the Rodriguez charge is relatively rare, but it happens. If it gets to the point of a hung jury, the Commonwealth could decide to retry the case.
It's an incredible expense upon both the Commonwealth and the defense. But again, it's expensive, but the price of justice is hard to value, right?
Outside of court, Reed and her attorneys no longer taking questions, exiting the property around the back, surrounded by private security and law enforcement. Reed's father also walking out, saying this.
How do you feel about this deadlock?
I'm very, very hopeful, very encouraged, yes. Have a nice weekend.
Jury deliberations will now continue into next week, which is a holiday week because of the 4th of July. J.C., Glenn.
Kirsten, thank you. Back in studio with us tonight is local attorney Morgietta Dorissier. Morgietta, let's talk about this morning. They came to the judge. They said they were deadlocked, and then both the prosecution and defense had a moment to stand up and give their thoughts. It sounded to me like the defense wanted the Judge Cannone to push for the what are called, I think they're called deadlock instructions.
Absolutely.
Why would they be pushing for that?
So let's just take a step back, right? So you're at an impasse with the jury, and you either are at an impasse or you get an acquittal, right? Or, they could come back with a conviction. But if they're coming at an impasse at a hung jury, that means that they're really not sure. And that's not a win for the prosecution. That's a win for the defense team, because at least they have people on their side who believe that she is not guilty in some respects, right? And so at that point, the coin is back into the prosecution's hand as to whether or not they're going to retry. And it's not always a guarantee. They may not. So at that point, it'd be a win for the defense because you're not sure if they're going to retry. So the other issue to consider is issues on appeal, right? As a defense attorney, you're going to want to push for the judge to say, hey, stop. The jury said that they've had enough, because there's issues of coercion. Is the jury being pushed too much? They can do individual questions of the jury, and if the jurors feel like they're being pushed too much, now you have an issue on appeal that will, unravel a lot of this.
Well, to the point you're making there, if the jury should come back a second time to tell the judge that they're still at an impasse, how does she handle that? Can she send them back again?
So she can send them back again. I think the official Tui Rodriguez instructions will be read to them. And when you listen to those instructions, it pretty much tells them that they're the best people to make this decision, right? So it gives them some sort of encouragement, or it's supposed to, that they're the ones that should decide this case. After that, then it really becomes questionable if she keeps sending them back.
What is that wording like that would push them? Because it sounds, that sounds like a real prompt.
Right. And so it's a really long instruction, but the key phrase is that the jury that is sitting right now is the best group of people to decide this case because they've already heard all the evidence, they've heard all the facts. That's the takeaway that they're getting from that they're the best triers of the facts that they've heard thus far. And so they really take heed to that.
All right, we have a viewer question from Sarah M. Here it is. Can the jury find her not guilty on the murder charge, but then be deadlocked on the lesser charges?
So I think in the reality is at some point the judge is going to question where they are. They're either going to be unanimous or they're not. You can't kind of split it up. They're either going to be unanimous, not guilty, or unanimous, guilty on some of the charges. You can't split the charges up. So if they're going to be unanimous on the lesser included, it's going to be guilty or not guilty.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's get to another viewer question here. This one is from JC in Rhode Island. I know that you don't live in Rhode Island, so I know it's not you.
Hi,
Am I missing something here, is what JC asked. Two brilliant accident reconstruction experts hired by the Justice Department, independent of the defense and the Commonwealth, all true, testified that the evidence is not consistent with John O'Keefe being hit by a vehicle. In JC's word, what is there even to deliberate?
Again, there were 74 witnesses,
Yep.
right? 653 pieces of evidence. It's not that simple for the jury. For us, we're looking at it from the outside in, right? We have all these resources. We go on YouTube.
And we
Facebook,
have you.
And
Right.
we have experts, right? They are really contained to what they've heard and what they've saw and what they took notes on. So it's not that simple for them to just say, oh my gosh, experts, it should just be canceled out. They really are going through all of the evidence to make sure they completely understand it.
Morgietta, don't go anywhere. Like you said, we need her.
We do need her, yes.
Still ahead on Canton Confidential, security at the courthouse is starting to become an issue the longer we wait for this verdict.
Today, we saw a minor clash between two crowds. More on the growing tensions when we come back. A shouting match outside the Norfolk County Superior Courthouse this afternoon. Counter-protesters showing up where hundreds of Karen Reed supporters have gathered to await a verdict. Joining us at the table now is our courtroom insider and commentator, Sue OConnell. Sue, that looks like a minor escalation to me in what's happening outside the courthouse, but I don't want to overstate it. What are you seeing when you're there?
So I'm going to say something that's completely sexist, and I'm going to own it in the beginning. Because these are 95% women, there seems to be a little less of an aggressive energy. I think if that had happened in a mostly male environment, there would have been a bigger escalation and a more violent violence, a scuffle. It would have been something more. So there is just a sort of natural inclination to not have it go higher. But as this is going on, as we are waiting for the verdict to come back, there are people who are just taking some matters into their own hands. We have seen reports that people had gone to a place where the O'Keefe family has been staying, waiting for the verdict, and you know, either just being there by chance or reporting that they're there. And we're seeing this group, who I've not seen before, who have come in, and they're there to agitate. They're not peacefully holding signs. There was conversations back and forth between the people in the crowd, as you saw, yelling, and there was an alert. I mean, the police, the state police and the police that are there went out and looked at it. So there is this feeling of a growing concern about the security around the courthouse and the security of the crowds.
Well, that was going to be my question is, are you concerned about the security? How comfortable does it feel right now, and what are your thoughts heading into next week?
Yeah, it feels comfortable. I mean, I feel safe. I feel that it's a safe environment. But I do know that the court personnel and the state troopers are hoping that nothing erupts when the verdict comes down, because people will be disappointed. Whatever the verdict is, people will be disappointed in how they behave, and we hope that they behave in a way that is respectful of the justice system, respectful of what the jurors come up with, and if they are unhappy with that, they express it in a way that is not violent and is not aggressive in any way or threatening to anyone who participated in the case. So I think that's a message that the security is trying to put out there. I mean, they're not. They're still making sure they're enforcing the buffer zone. They're trying to keep people. They're being polite. You just can't sit in certain places. But there definitely is a stronger presence and security presence there.
As you know, we get a lot of questions from viewers about the jury. How do they get in and out of the courthouse safely and, in some ways, discreetly, which I think is supposed to be the objective?
Yeah, they're not coming in and out the front door. The area that they're coming into the courthouse has been sealed off by the state police, and their cars they're not parking there. So they are not there on site. So keeping the jury anonymous right now and safe is pretty much the #1 priority for the court officers, who are doing a great job and are exceptional, and the state troopers there, who are also being very, very mindful of their security.
I wonder if, because they came back and said that they were deadlocked at noon, if that just let a little of the tension or the air out of the balloon, just a little bit, because now at least we have an idea of where the jury's heads are at. We're not in the dark like we were 12 hours ago.
Right. We do have information, but, like we talked about earlier today, some people are experiencing this process for the first time in a connected way. I mean, we all learn about it and we all watch it on television, but I've talked to a number of families that have come, a husband and a wife and their daughter who were there today. They had traveled there, they had the day off, and we just had a really complex conversation about the jury system and what happens and what they might be doing. And people have served on juries, so they're also, one man talked to me today about how they let somebody who had a DUI off from a second charge because they felt that the officers who were testifying, they didn't like them. So there's a lot of experience that people bring based on what they've had, and they're learning a lot. I mean, we're learning a lot, and we have to also, as Morgietta said, the jurors are supposed to be experiencing this for the first time, and we're like, come on, where's the answer? Right. But they're going through all of this evidence for the very first time without the experts, without the internet, without any of that.
When this started, Sue, I don't know if July and the Karen Reed trial were part of your schedule, but they certainly are now.
No, I was planning on being on vacation next week, but I'm going to be here Monday and Tuesday.
All right, good, because we can't do this without you. Sue O'Connell, thank you. Clearly, the town of Dedham is on edge as we wait. But what about beyond the city's limits?
Thousands of people from all over the country have been watching this trial play out. What's behind their passionate feelings in a case with limited impact for many of them? When we come back. Welcome back. If you have been watching this trial in real time every day, all the testimony, then this looks familiar to you.
It sure does.
So the camera in the courtroom pans up to the fan when it is not active on the trial itself. Thousands of people, tens of thousands of people are watching. And I, Glenn, have been oddly now, I need the fan.
Yes.
I'm oddly connected to the fan.
And people are so fixated on it because they know if they don't watch the fan, they might miss something.
Exactly.
Right.
It's the hold and wait. Something's happening.
All right. The fan has its own group of fans. Trust me, I've seen the comments. But the fact is, the number of people glued to their screens has continued to grow as this trial develops. And the people who are waiting and watching are passionate.
They are. So joining us now is Brandy Churchwell, host of the 13th Juror podcast. Brandy, thanks for being back with us here. Based on your experience following all these other high-profile trials, why do you think this case has sparked so much interest among people who either don't have direct or, in some cases, any connection to the trial?
I think that's kind of a multi-part answer for a couple reasons. I think the first thing that grabs your attention is it's a female defendant, which female murder defendants are maybe 10 to 15% of what we see. So an attractive female defendant is the first thing. Then you have the victim is, an attractive Boston cop with a heart of gold, took in these kids after tragedy. And then I think what makes this one so different is that there's also this alternate theory. And we don't normally have that. We have the theory of, maybe somebody else did it or maybe it was an accident, but a whole different scenario of who's responsible is something that we normally don't have. And so people have gotten really invested in this, and especially because it's this family who is, we're being told that they're using their political and law enforcement connections to set up this outsider to take the fall for whatever it is that people believe happened. And it becomes, instead of just, are they guilty, are they not? It becomes, which one of these is guilty, and is she fighting against this system? And then people get emotionally invested in it because it becomes everybody's fight. They're looking at her as being railroaded by the corrupt police and system, and they want to look at it as, this could be me, this could be family members, and people have gotten really emotionally invested in feeling like they're fighting with her.
And all those emotionally invested people are now waiting for a verdict, and it might explain part of the reason why in the last segment we saw a little bit of an escalation in tensions outside the courthouse. What about virtually? What about online? What are your followers saying in these days as we all wait for a verdict?
The tension that like the clips that you showed where there's that tension in person, there is that tension online as well, plus some. I think that the emotional connection that people have had to this, people have fought really hard one way or the other. And I think that because of that, as we've watched, stayed glued to the fan and stayed glued to, the 8 weeks, 9 weeks before that, where we're hanging on to every detail and waiting for information that we didn't hear before to try to piece things together. People have gotten very emotionally invested and have fought for whatever side that they believe in. And online, it's almost like with that protection of there being the anonymity behind the keyboard, and you kind of don't have to take responsibility for the way that for how low you go when you're fighting. I think that has kind of caused a level of, it kind of goes beyond passion at this point, and there is a level of almost toxicity where people are just so angry and wanting to tell everybody else why their version of what happened is right, and anybody else could not possibly have any idea what's going on if you don't believe exactly what I believe.
I can understand that. Brandy Churchwell, thank you so much. Host of the 13th Juror podcast. We appreciate you coming back on, sharing your insight.
Thank you.
When we come back, we're answering more of your questions. Will we see a mistrial? What will happen next?
Morgietta Dorsey and Sue O'Connell rejoin us at the table. Stay with us. You are watching Canton Confidential, the Karen Reed murder trial.
The past couple of days have left many of us with questions about how this could play out. In fact, since the trial ended, we've gotten more questions, since the jury went out. This first one is from Kathy. Sue, will ask you this question.
Okay.
I am wondering how the jurors can possibly live their lives and not accidentally hear about the trial on the radio, on the news, or standing in line at Starbucks.
So this might also get your help here, too. I think the instruction is not to seek it out or look at it. If you find it, tell us about it, right?
Absolutely.
So there's no way they can avoid it, especially if they live in Norfolk County, especially if they go to Dedham. I mean, that's a center that people go to. So I think they're supposed to excuse themselves from conversations, turn the TV off if it comes on, turn the radio down. I mean, I know when I'm driving, it's, listening to the radio, everybody has an expert on that they're talking to, not as good as our experts, but so I think that they're just supposed to try to avoid it and talk to the judge, tell the court officers if they do. Right?
That's an important
Absolutely.
distinction.
Yeah, and that's why it's really important to keep them anonymous so they don't have to feel inclined to ask questions or research and things like that.
Okay, let's get to another viewer question. This is from Joan B. If Karen Reed is found not guilty, this leaves the O'Keefe family without answers. Will there be further investigation into who is guilty of killing John O'Keefe? Morgietta, let's start with you.
And I think that, we've discussed this several times, that the prosecution still has a duty, to find justice for the O'Keefe family. They may very well retry Karen Reed, right? They may drop some of the major charges, the second-degree murder, maybe just go for the manslaughter charges or involuntary manslaughter at that point. The investigation is hard, because there are so many inconsistencies. It's really hard to go back to find new evidence, right? They have the evidence that they have, and I don't think at this point there's any other further investigation that they can do outside of what they already have.
Of course, There could be new evidence,
Of course.
that gets introduced. There could be somebody, if something happened and they know and they didn't share it, that could come forward and that could impact the O'Keefe family getting the answers that they deserve and justice in some form being served for John O'Keefe. But you can't predict the future, and you can't predict if that would happen and when it would happen.
Yeah, you got to imagine that no accountability in the death of John O'Keefe would be the most heartbreaking thing for the O'Keefe family.
Absolutely.
Having closure would be so important.
Yeah, when they didn't come to a verdict today, I could see Mrs. O'Keefe and just, we all went in expecting a verdict this afternoon, and because of the change in the extra 45 minutes.
They asked for an extra 45 minutes. To me, they were dotting the I's, crossing the T's.
Yeah. Thank you both. We'll see you next week. Thank you for joining us for Canton Confidential tonight. Jury deliberations will continue next week starting at 9 a.m.
Make sure you continue to check back with us at 7 o'clock starting Monday.